Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about aspects of Yedo 6. Despite this new format, we are still going to be talking about Yedo. So we're going to keep going with that series. I just want to try something a little bit different. I want to try my hand at a different format, kind of see if I like it more, if it's received a little bit better, if it makes the ideas a little bit clearer, all that fun stuff. So let me know if you like this format, and let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is the hit. Now the hit is a little bit different from what we talked about in Sangsu 10, where you're hitting the sword out of the way. This is starting from a draw, right? So you're up against someone, you're going to hit them with the butt of your sword. Depending on your interpretation, this could be a stun. Now if you've learned some of the Sangsu forms a couple years ago, so maybe more than a couple years ago by now, you actually see this technique in something as early as Sangsu 8. Now the application of these two moves, so from the old Yedo 8 and the new, not new, but at least the Yedo 6, they have different applications, right? So if you notice in the old Sangsu 8, again, this is not how we do it anymore. You kind of get into a nice short stance, right? You're hitting someone, and you're going to do a nice powerful uppercut and draw back down, right? Again, this is more of an aggressive, more of a attacking kind of motion, as opposed to what we're going to be doing in Yedo 6. Now, in the current form, right, so in the current Sangsu 8, there is no hit. I know this was something when it was changed, my soul curled up and shriveled a little bit. But now it is simply break the seal and just draw the blade a little bit, right? So it's not intended to be a hit and then cut. It's just draw, so it's like partial draw, kind of checking out the two people kind of up against you, and then you're going to do your uppercut. But you're not here to talk about the old Sangsu way, the old ways, right? You're here to talk about Yedo. So you're going to notice that just the texture of these two forms is very, very different. Now our next point is going to talk about, again, why we do this. But even just take a look at what the difference is between what happened in Sangsu, the old Sangsu 8 and our new Yedo. So notice that I say, mostly upright as I hit the solar plexus. Now I'm going to turn, clear cut, and do a quick put away. So a quick note on that even is that the put away isn't even a full put away, right? It's not even like the half put away we've kind of seen in Sangsu 10, for example. You literally just clear and bounce straight back into the scabbard. So that seems pretty strange, right? But again, you might wonder what's the point, right? So I allegedly, try to hit someone, I cleared behind me, I turned back to face the front. What's going on? Notice in the form, again, we hit, we turn, clear cut behind us. This is actually not going to be a hit against someone per se, although you could interpret it as such. But if you do, you kind of run the risk of losing a characteristic of this form that really makes it unique. So again, this leads us to our second major aspect I want to talk about, and that's the idea of non-lethal engagement. Now that said, this should be true for all forms regardless, right? You really shouldn't go into a situation with the intention of just, murder, right? The idea especially is still in combat, still in warfare per se, but especially in more modern martial arts, the idea is to stop the confrontation before it even happens, right? This is going to be very, very true for a lot of the open hand styles, so I'm thinking about like Taekwondo and stuff like that, where like the true victory is to win a fight without ever having to actually, draw blood, hurt someone, or anything like that. So what I really like about this this particular form is that it really instantiates that to a degree that once you're aware of it, you can retcon the idea to all the other forms. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, but this is something to keep in mind. So let's break it down a little bit more, right? So if we take a look, so we start off with that jab, right? So that's showing your quick reflexes. So you know that someone was coming closer to you. You're like, nope, like I saw you coming, don't even try. And then you're going to try to do your hit. Now what happens after that is going to be our big clear behind us, right? So what's the purpose of this clear? It's just to show that you can draw your sword. You know how to use a weapon Like, don't mess with me. I've used this sword before. It's not something that I just picked off the street. But then take a look what happens next, right? So we hit, we clear, and then we have that movement, right? So we have that forward and backward movement that we kind of saw in Sangsu 3. That negotiation of pressure. That idea of like, all right, look, I just showed you my reflexes. I just showed you that I can, in fact, draw the sword, put it away. In a very difficult put away, that means I had to know how to use that specific sword. So for example, if you've tried to do this put away with like a sword from like your instructor or like a sword you're just not used to, it's hard, right? Because it has to go straight back into your scabbard as opposed to, again, that nice draw that we're really used to. So this demonstrates, again, quick reflexes, you know how to use this specific sword, and then you demonstrate your ability to just pressure. Like, all right, look, you can see what I can do. Do you still want to do this? So again, this embodies something that modern martial arts really instantiates, right? It's the idea of like, look, don't fight, let's not even start, right? Let's end this before we even get, before, any blood is shed. But notice something that happens in this form. So notice again, we give them ample opportunity to be like, yo, I know how to use this, you're trying to kill me, right? Let's not even do this. But notice once, again, like enough time has passed, like, all right, like, look, if you stay here, we're gonna fight, we're gonna engage. But notice when we do engage, it's not half-hearted. So actually, the next point we're gonna talk about is the most powerful diagonal cut in Yedo, potentially in Gumdo that we know of. Once you engage, you are back to your original training, right? So this is dispatch moves, right? So the very first one that you see, like as you saw in the past footage, is that nice big clear. You're really engaging that whole body to kind of drag your body or drag the sword across the target. Once you engage, you are now in combat, and once you're in combat, the idea is to dispatch, right? Now obviously in modern martial arts, don't dispatch, just don't do it, that's bad. The idea works similarly, right? So that means, if you fight confidently, right? So for example, if I'm, in open hand, and I realize that we have to actually, come to fisticuffs, like I'm still going to make sure you're down, right? Without being like, oh, I don't want to break the nose, that's gonna, and then you just go for it, right? It's like, all right, we're here, you wanted to fight, you're having your fight, fight's over, we're done, right? So again, I like this, and you're going to notice that, again, this idea can translate into other aspects of the forms. So on that cheerful note, let's talk about our allegedly most powerful diagonal cut. So just for context, right, so we just did a nice big uppercut. We're going to do like almost like a running skip diagonal. This is going to be pretty darn powerful, so let's take a look. So notice, again, we have that translation of the body, that cocking back of the arm for a nice big, very big, powerful diagonal cut. And also, we just kind of turn behind us to make sure, again, no one's trying to sneak up on us. But it's just a new, fun move, right? The idea is you just see someone and they're either like a little bit too far away or they're, obviously they have to be further away for this. You just like look at them and like, I'm coming for you. I'm just gonna do a running jump diagonal cut towards them. Now this is a very powerful cut. It's also not that hard on the body because the stance and the movement of the body really absorbs the motion very, very well. But again, like with all of our previous videos, at least in this series, can we retcon? Can we take the ideas of this, of this form to other forms? So our first idea was simply hitting someone with the bottom of the sword, right? So the butt of the sword. Now, if we kind of exclude Sangsu 8, probably not, right? So we don't really do it like as a technique per se, but can we, right? So the idea of this is to, just like with what we were talking about with the non-lethality, is for you to force someone to back off, but you can actually apply this hit to other forms. So for example, we can actually apply as early as Sangsu 1. Notice that we can actually use the butt of the sword to strike forward and then, cross, right? So it's not two motions, but the idea was to come forward and then turn with your cut. Also in Sangsu 3, right? The idea of almost like hitting someone in the nose and coming close, hit both sides. And again, one of my favorite forms, Sangsu 7, right? That giant big center cut to really work on that clear. So in theory, you can actually use, again, this hit as early as Sangsu 1. It's not canonical, but you can do it as such. So what about the idea of starting non-lethally? Now that said, in general, like we go to town in fighting, right? But we can, right? So the idea of like exuding that pressure against your opponent even before you get started with the fight. So this can be seen even as early as even no form, right? So just going into chumbi, right? Going to chumbi or just going to your draw, that is a time for you to manifest that pressure, manifest that, you know, that idea of like, dude, back off, right? So even coming into a chumbi position, right? Notice that the chest is puffed out. You clearly look ready for combat. You're telling the other person like, yo, if you continue going, we're gonna be fighting, right? Now another thing to note is also, this is not the only way you can start non-lethally, and this is also going to be true for, again, actually the grand majority of at least the beginning forms. So the beginning Sangsu forms is that simply the first cut is not lethal. For most of our early Sangsu forms, the first crosscut is a clear. Like the idea is not to bifurcate someone in half in the very first move. It's to be like, all right, you're coming at me, I'm drawing my sword, I know how to use the sword, we're in defense, do you want to continue, right? So if you even take a look at something as early as, again, form 1. So you see the person, you draw, and then defense. But notice you give them the time that they need to back down if they want to. But just like what we talked about in this form, once they fail to back down after like the gauntlet has been thrown, you fight. Right, so again, martial arts is intended to fight. Sword martial arts specifically are intended to dispatch. So just keep that in mind as you keep training, is that should be your intention, right? Your intentionality should be like, all right, we're fighting, this is what we need to do. With regard to our new move, right, so the running diagonal, it's a new move. We can't really retcon the whole thing into a previous form because it's a new move, but we can take ideas from that form, from that technique, and apply those to many other diagonals. So notice you start with the activation of your core before you lunge in for that cut. Also note that you can use your hip to engage that whole body with your cut. Now notice those two things you can also incorporate into that cross cut we do in the very next move, and again, that manifestation of that pressure after we kind of bring it back in from our low guard. So those concepts aren't new, right? So engaging the core, engaging, again, the hips to kind of get a little more power, especially in your diagonal cuts, especially in your center cuts, to a certain degree, the cross cuts and your upcuts. But you can take those ideas and incorporate them pretty much whenever you actually want to cut something. So that's it for this video. So hopefully you like the new style. I'm trying something new. I'm trying to have a different kind of quality in the video. That might mean we might slow down a little bit, so maybe not, twice a week per se. But I would like to be able to do something a little bit more like this, where we can have a little more detail in what we're looking at. But so with that, so make sure you stay safe, stay humble, and keep training. Haidong!